Start off with a nice simple one for you. What were the most significant challenges to you in the region for delivering JESIP, and how did you overcome those challenges?
When we first thought of numbers, we were looking at sort of sergeants, inspectors, all those at that level, and potentially even higher that could be involved in that golden hour. So our first numbers were quite high, but then we got some sort of guidance from JESIP as to how we could potentially narrow that down a bit. Who we ended up training, the way our force works is in our control room we have a force incident commander who's a chief inspector. They're on 24/7, so all they were trained. Out on the ground we have critical incident inspectors, again they're 24/7, so they were trained. And sergeant-wise, i.e. those will be out on patrol with their shifts. Those that would like to cover that role or were in the busier sort of conurbation areas, they were trained as well. So in the end it was about 55 officers who were trained from Dorset.
The Dorset Fire, I guess the sort of big challenge we had was around the competition with other training. So there's only so much time available for training. Some of our staff had very limited amount of time to do it, so that was always going to be a pressure. I guess what was useful, because it was a national programme, all of our chief officers, the senior groups in all the services were agreed they were going to do it, so that kind of brought a national pressure, but it kind of brought a national incentive to do it. The other bit that was kind of interesting for us was thinking about how Dorset Fire, so fire and rescue services are different. So London Fire Brigade and Metropolitan Fire Service functions differently from a rural fire and rescue service. So although there might be people at similar ranks in different organisations in London and Dorset, for example, they perform very different roles. So trying to interpret the kind of national doctrine and national guidance and think although it might say this particular role is the one who should do this job, what really it was about was the kind of function that person performs. So you wanted to target people who are going to be most influential in the early stages of an incident. And I think once we got that idea in our heads, that made it a lot clearer, and it was really easy to kind of pick the right tier of people to train. And ever so quickly we sort of did that, and we had the confidence to say we've now got good coverage across all our kind of key commands. So that was probably training capacity and focusing in on exactly who had to be trained were the two tough ones to start with.
Brilliant, thanks guys. Next one, moving on to the actual training itself, a lot of it is talking about capabilities and capacities across the three services and how we work together. Do you think the way that the courses were set up as joint courses, do you think that has helped us understand a bit better how we're going to work together?
Yeah, certainly in the feedback we got, one of the strong positives was working together with other colleagues. The networking opportunity, and they benefited from going to like the tabletop and this sort of thing with people that they knew they would work with, on a daily basis, if you like, and certainly in relation to some of the sort of like real life incidents when JESIP was being used. Commanders were talking with people that they had met on the course, and therefore they were comfortable using the joint decision-making model and that sort of stuff. So from that point of view, that was very worthwhile.
And I think there were lots of side benefits with, because of the JESIP courses, there's a set of presentations, exercises, kind of tasks to complete within your group. So that works really well, but that's the kind of national perspective. And of course, when you bring it down to a county or a region, there are lots of localisms that are still really important to understand. So within our local resilience forum, there are plans for activating a phone conference for alerting other responders. Actually is really kind of key to getting coordination of incidents started, but not many people know about them. Only people in that kind of emergency planning field knew about them. So all those kind of side conversations you've had while you're doing the national training, while you're doing that, you learn a huge amount about other organisations and about Dorset. So you can't undervalue everything else that happens in the room as a consequence of going through a course together. So that was hugely valuable.
I think the content aside, you get value as tri-service commanders by just spending time with each other whether that's on a knitting course or on a JESIP course. You know, there's value in spending time together because you get to know each other, understand how each other's works. The soft culture bits that actually are the real barriers on an incident ground. And we saw a lot of those being broken down as people reflected on their own experiences and felt able to ask the daft questions they couldn't ask at the incident ground. So why do the fire service do this? What policy is that? Where did that come from? What does this term mean? Those questions which they were able to work through together and then come out the back of it with some relationships. So when they do get to the incident ground, Bob does know Charlie, and they can all, you know, have a relationship from which they can begin to manage the incident. And those kind of soft benefits are so important, I think.
Moving on, looking at the future, and you've touched on some of it so far with the other agencies, are there plans within Dorset looking at all your standing operating procedures and all your other plans that are being JESIP? Obviously nationally through the 3 services we're trying to JESIP all of the plans. Are there local plans that are now JESIP with methane and the like?
It's certainly been encouraged, and I think it'll be a gradual process. I mean, in relation to our organisation, we recently undertook our annual sort of first aid training, and the one I went to, obviously the first things that they talked about was where you need to assess an incident first off, and the mnemonic you use is SAD Chalet, which is, you know, what used to be our version of methane. So it was brought to their attention. Actually, you know, in JESIP we're training, you know, the methane mnemonic. And yet in training that's going to everyone in our force, first aid, you're using the old version, if you like, and therefore that training package was changed and methane's been introduced. So I think it's going to be a gradual process in relation certainly to our multi-agency plans. Things like methane, the joint decision-making model are being introduced, and that's obviously the way we'll hopefully it will be a message that just gradually gets, you know, embedded throughout the resilience community.
What we've tried to do within fire is we did some of the stuff around methane and chalets, and that was a fairly kind of easy thing to do. Some of the procedures are updating. There's occasionally going to be detention, so we have there's a national guidance on command and control in the fire service, which is very similar to JESIP, but it was written before JESIP came out. So of course it doesn't, you know, the documents we've got, the command training, the assessment, doesn't automatically include that reference, so we're starting to kind of add that in, but you can see a point in the future where commanders' development courses include it, the command assessments, the maintenance of skills include it, and that's probably only a year or 2 away for us. So as long as you kind of start the process and you start building it in, changing the training, changing the assessment, it will get there, and then it's we can forget about JESIP team, we can probably forget about calling it JESIP because it's just how we manage emergencies together.
For us, and I guess I come back to my earlier point, which was about you can always tick the box but miss the point sometimes. And this is a real opportunity whilst there's executive buy-in and a lot of impetus behind the programme to really grip this. So we set ourselves a very challenging deadline at the end of this month. So from the 1st of October, there won't be a SWAS policy, procedure, SOP plan, piece of doctrine, published guidance, anything on the website or the intranet that refers to anything other than JESIP doctrine. And that allows us to move forward.